Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Newsday. Once again, the potato of a PC has caused us to delay, but that's all right. We made it, and I'm here today with Mike Stackpole. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm
Aside
good.
from dealing with computers, yeah.
Yeah, this is. I should have been spending all of tech being so excited and fangirling a little bit, but instead I was like, oh God, why?
The universal struggle.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to finally have you on and talk about your new release and a little bit about you and get to know you a little better. But of course, we've got to start with the news.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's what I've got for you guys. BattleTech releases. I'm pretty sure we had an issue with the web store getting some of these up, but I think it might be fixed now. But it should be up for Map Pack Savannah, Inner Sphere Recon Lands Force Pack, Clan Cavalry Star Force Pack, Battlefield Support, Battle and Fire Lances Force Pack, and the Battle Mat City HPG Heliport. And then in 8 days, you're also going to get the Inner Sphere Security Lands Force Pack, House Davian Heavy Battle Lands Force Pack, and Sun Tzu's The Art of War, translated by Jamie Wolf. All of those will be street dated on February 19th and on our store then or shortly thereafter in terms of US and Canada. Also, so this came up last week. I can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, because, one day to the next is a blur. But we did a live fiction reading on Wednesday last week from the Leviathan's short story, A Monster in the Sky. And it went really well. We had a lot of fun, and we want to do it again. So I'm planning a BattleTech one for later this week and or this weekend. I need to choose a day and time and do it, but this week is kind of getting away from me a little bit. So we're going to get something scheduled. So watch the social medias and the Discord server, and we'll be posting about it there. And we'll get a live stream link up as well. If you click subscribe on the YouTubes, you should be notified. Then I've got for Shadowrun, March comes with Deadly Arts, which is super exciting. And Takedown is in production. It's been in production for a little bit. There's not really any news while we wait for the manufacturing side. We knew that they were going to finish after Chinese New Year. I'm going to sneeze. I'm a mess today, guys. But we knew there was that after Chinese New Year that they were going to be finishing up and getting that on the boat. So hopefully we'll have more info on that shortly. For board games, April 2nd we'll be releasing Flippin' Ninjas, which is our brand new game. So I haven't gotten to play it yet. It will be at Gamma. We will be at Gamma at the end of February. So if you're a retailer going, come say hi. We'll have a booth. And I'll be doing a panel too on when to bring in help for crowdfunding. Then we've got Runefire for board games as well. So working on that. Randall's done a huge playtest thing. So it's like minor fixes at this point that are going through. I think I'm allowed to announce actually what is... I'm blanking on his name, so let me pull it up real quick. The artist that is doing the cover for the box, because the one we've been showing has just been a mock-up prototype so that we could take it to trade shows and stuff like that, have something to show. But let me find out. Cover artist. I'll know the name when I see it. Wayne Reynolds! So that's really exciting that he's going to be working on that. He's a legend. So I'm so excited to see what that box finally looks like. You can follow the Kickstarter project to see. We will be updating the Backer Kit pre-launch page with more info as we have it. And as we get it from Randall, we'll be sprucing it up and stuff like that. So I'll get you guys that link to Runefire. All right. What else do we have? RPGs. So in just over a month, it is February 11th right now. In just over a month, we'll be launching the Frostpunk TTRPG Kickstarter. I'm really excited that this is finally here, and 11-bit has been super great to partner with. Because we're launching as a sister campaign with them, because they'll have a campaign for a anthology of fiction and an art book, and then we'll have the TTRPG with a whole bunch of extras. They reached out to us, and there's going to be a exclusive reward for the first 24 to 48 hours. And it's going to be a metal art frame or art piece for Frostpunk. So there will be one that you can get on their campaign and one that you can get on our campaign. So exclusive, gonna be super cool. I can't wait to see the artwork for it. But I'm excited, and I should drop in that link too. Doot. Whee! Frostpunk. Boop. All right. Then Voltron, we are just about done with the pledge manager and ready to launch it. We had like an extra question about retailer tier to take to the team, so that should be going live here any day now. So I'm very excited for that. What else do I have? No news on the lock. I know that Tommy is going to Randall's tomorrow to like play all day and get some assets and talk everything going on with the lock. So maybe we'll have more news soon. Leviathans is, I've said a few weeks now, is on the boat. So a backer update went out today. It's been a long time since we have asked for addresses from backers. So if you either haven't done your address or you if you either haven't done your address or your address has changed in that time, please go in and change your address because we will be needing that info to send to our fulfillment partner. We've signed a contract with WebSphere for fulfillment, so we haven't used them before, but we're excited. And we need to get them the addresses so that they can get us all the shipping quotes to update. So exciting stuff moving forward for Leviathans. And then we are 7 days away from launching we aren't, but our friends of Catalyst here at Fanroll are launching their Catan Kickstarter, the Masterpiece series. And we have a partnership with them to help promote. They've been great. They've done our Battletech dice. They've done the anniversary dice. They've got more coming with Catalyst, so they've been really great partners for us. And so if you, there's a couple cool things that I've found out about this. So I'm going to put this link in the chat for Catan. So the Masterpiece series is really like luxury style upgrades for your Catan set, tiles, frames, the little port boats, cities, settlements, metal, ancient civilizations like the Aztec and the Egyptian and stuff like that, which is super fun. But if you follow that link, or if you click that link and follow the project, we get 50 cents for everyone that follows. So very low lift for you. But also, if you follow the project, and then once the project launches, if you do decide to back it, you get an exclusive pin that says, "Yes, we Catan." It's super cute. So check that out. All right, I think I'm done. Hi, Mike.
Hey,
you're so patient.
That is a lot.
The list keeps getting longer when I think of each of the lines.
Sure. Which is very cool.
It's very cool, and it's not slowing down. I've got more stuff that I get to announce later in the next couple of months that I'm very excited about. So, but how are you? Let's talk about All things
I'm doing
Stackpole.
great.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, I'm doing fine.
My favorite, so we've had a couple of authors on the show before that have talked about like how long the pipeline is, like from the time you get an assignment to the time it gets published.
Right.
So my favorite reaction, I think, was we got on tech and I was like, so what is it we're promoting? What book are we promoting of yours? And you were like, oh, hell if I know. And I love that. So so I did reach out to John, and it is Heir Apparent.
Okay, it is Heir Apparent.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
So I've got a link to the books to read, which is I'm going to put in chat right here. What can you tell us about this?
So Heir Apparent was the first of 4 fairly long novellas that I did back when Harebrained Scheme was doing their Kickstarter for the Mech Warrior game, the
Cool.
BattleTech game, and the things that were fun about it is that these were stretch goals, and so first it was 1, and then all of them ended up being filled out. The other thing was that a dozen people bought the rights to be represented as a character in it. So I ended up spending an hour talking to each of the dozen, finding out what they were interested in. I had a whole list of questions about how I could characterize them, and one of the questions was, "Do you mind if you die?" And some of them didn't care. Some of them were a little wary about wanting to die. I don't understand that, and so it was really cool. The story takes place out in the periphery, in the area where the Harebrained Scheme game was being set, and but as the story goes on, it ventures into the inner sphere and then back out. It was a lot of fun to put together, and allowed me to do some different stuff. Plus, because it's taking place right around I think the years 3005, if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere in that area. It was historically the earliest BattleTech story I'd done.
Ooh.
And I got to tie into, for the first time ever, we see Quintus Allard, who was a big character, and his 2 sons are alluded to, and so it was just a lot of fun getting me to be able to go back and add more superstructure to all the stuff that I'd done. And so if anybody reads these, they'll see where they tie into all the other stuff, the Calhounds and everything else.
Cool. I'm pulling up a screenshot of the book so that I can share it on stream as well. Okay. Have you gotten to see the cover yet?
I have. Matter of fact, I ended up reposting it on Blue Sky because it's a good. That's a really good picture. It's a new iteration of the cover that HBS had put on the books. Awesome. Originally when they sent them out. So,
who do you know who the artist was?
I haven't a clue. John would know, but I'll
have to message him.
Yep, in my eyes, out. It gets lost somewhere. If he ever told me.
If he ever told you.
Which he may not have.
There it is. All right, I'm getting it up on the screen for you guys in just a second here. Oh, that's teeny tiny. Let's make that bigger. Whee! There we go. It's not the most high quality photo, but we'll get you. All right, should be here in a second. Awesome. So taking place very early, taking place in the periphery, and now this is part 1 of a novella series, right?
Right. Part 1 of 4.
Do we know when the others are coming out, or is there a timeline for that?
I think there was going to be 1 per quarter.
Oh, okay.
That was what I thought was going to be. That's what I heard. No one ever tells me these things officially. I just hear from other people that this is when this stuff is happening. So.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, gosh, you've been working on BattleTech for ages. Do you have, like, for anyone joining us, after the Mercenaries Kickstarter, so many people back that, we got into Barnes and Noble and Target and stuff like that. So there's
Right.
a whole new generation of people getting into BattleTech. Um, where do you recommend for fiction that they start, at least in terms of your books?
It's a really good question. Usually the answer is you start with the Blood of Kerensky books because that introduces the clans, um, and that is that's the generation of a lot of the new leaders and where the politics has gone. The warrior books are a generation before that, and that's where I certainly started. And then since then, I've gone back and written the origins of the Kellhounds books, and so those. Are out with Kellhounds Ascending, and then this series goes even further back. But basically, either the Warrior books or the Blood of Kerensky. And again, Blood of Kerensky is generally where folks point that out.
Okay.
But and I think for each of the eras, there are different books that you can lock into, like the I've forgotten what the era was. Now it's called with Devlin Stone and everything like that. The Republic of the Sphere. That's it.
Ah,
That era, Ghost Wars. They had me do the book that introduced all of that. So
awesome.
there's another starting point if you wanted to do that.
Cool. Cool. Do you have, I know it's hard to identify probably, but do you have a favorite that may not necessarily be newbie friendly? But like what is like that book that you've worked on that you're like, yes.
That's really, really tough because I've done 14, 15 novels in the series, and they're all long, and I dearly love all the characters. So it's really tough to pick one out. When that question was asked last year at Adepticon and stuff, several different people said Ghost War was their favorite. Um, I have a partiality for Assumption of Risk, but that's because Assumption of Risk finishes off a piece of the storyline that started in the Blood of Kerensky books. And so, there was the Blood of Kerensky books and there was Natural Selection. And so it took about 2-3 years before we were able to tie off that piece of the story. And so I was really, really happy to be able to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So something I've kind of always wanted to talk to you about in the couple of times that I've gotten to meet you in person now and stuff is as a writer, your name has this legend quality to it where people have to whisper it, where like, oh, it's Mike Stackpole. So being like having the career, the writing career you've done and the IPs that you've worked on, why BattleTech?
I started in the gaming industry, and so I knew the guys from FASA, enough to chat with them, and I had written a novel, and I said to him, I said they had just started doing novels, in the late '80s, and saw him at Origins and said, hey, I can write, and they looked at me quite rightly with that skepticism, saying, oh really, oh my god, another game designer who thinks he can write. um, and they were very nice and said, sure, send us a sample. And I did, and it turned out I was a game designer who could actually write. So BattleTech, BattleTech very much gave me my start. The first two BattleTech
Wow.
novels were my first published novels, and so I always sort of told myself, because this is where I started, I will always make time for this.
Aw.
I mean, it just seems to me to be eminently fair, and it's kind of amazing, um, to still be involved in it. The almost going on 40 years. I think this is like year 37, 38, something like that. So it's kind of cool to be still involved and to be able to work with, Lauren and Randall and people I've known, being involved in the universe for nigh on to forever. And then we have all these new younger writers, they're all very enthusiastic, and it's a very weird thing when you're dealing with writers who end up saying, oh my god, I grew up reading your stuff. 'cause I don't think of myself as being that ancient, but apparently I am. You know, and it's really kind of cool. It sometimes it's difficult to deal with, but it's very cool.
That's so awesome. Gosh, to have started. So I have to ask then, at starting in gaming in the industry, I didn't know you were a game designer. What have you worked on?
Oh gosh. Well, I did a bunch of computer games. So Wasteland, Bard's Tale 3, two of the Star Trek games that came out from Interplay, Neuromancer.
Ooh.
But prior to that, worked on Tunnels and Trolls, and I freelanced for. I did Mercenary Spies and Private Eyes, which was a role playing game in and of itself. I did the Renegade Legion role playing game for FASA, and then I freelanced for pretty much everybody and his brother, including for Mayfair Games. I did the Batman source book. Uh, Several things for TSR. Just when you're a freelancer, whatever anyone pays you for, you'll do. So,
Gosh, that's awesome. So how did you, from starting with BattleTech and FASA, um, how did you end up getting into Star Wars and some of these massive IPs that you write for now?
um, with Star Wars, I was really, really, it was very fortunate. I had a contract with Bantam Books to do two fantasy novels for them, and they had the Star Wars license, and they had bought a 12-book license, and Lucasfilm wouldn't sell them any more books. So Bantam said, "Well, how about if we buy a license to the X-wing computer game?" And Lucasfilm was willing to consider that, and so an editor from Bantam called me up because they knew I had worked doing computer games. And they asked me, they said, "We're thinking about buying a license to a computer game." Didn't tell me what it was. Um, how do you think it's going to go? And I said, which was true at the time, yeah, computer gamers are not readers. They're not going to read. They want to be, they're going to be playing the games, reading novels and stuff like that. That's not really, not going to have a strong over. And so I was fairly negative about the whole idea. And the editor said, "Oh, that's too bad. We were thinking about buying a license to the X-Wing game." And I said, "Oh, Star Wars, buy it." You know, and little did I know that when they started going through their list of authors, and they needed somebody who could work fast, could do military science fiction, had worked with tie-in stuff, could do humor and do exciting things, and done computer games. So was familiar with all of this stuff. I was the only guy who checked off all of the boxes. So I literally, and this was holy cats. It was on Valentine's Day, so the anniversary is coming up. 6 in the morning, got a phone call from my agent in New York saying, "Bantam just offered you 4 Star Wars books." I said yes, um, and and that was it. The die was cast. So
Gosh, that's awesome.
it was really pretty funny.
Did you get off? Was it one of those moments you get off the phone and you're like, "Holy shit!"
It really takes a little bit. It takes a little while for that sort of thing to sink in. And even back then, even though Tim Zahn's books had done really, really well, um, there was no real. I think if you weren't involved in Star Wars, there was no real sense of how absolutely monumental it was. I mean, was I a fan of Star Wars? Yes. Was I aware of Star Wars? Absolutely. But you cannot realize how world dominating Star Wars is until you're working within the property.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden it is everywhere. I literally, you had mentioned you're going to be at Gamma. So Gamma was being held after I'd said yes, that particular year in March. It was being held in New Orleans. And I was out to dinner with a friend of mine at a little tiny restaurant. And as you do with friends, we're both asking, "What are you doing? What's coming up?" And so I said to my friend, "Well, I got this great offer. I've been offered these Star Wars books, so I'm going to be writing Star Wars stuff." And we're just chatting back and forth. this couple at the next table gets up, and the young man who had been eating there put a piece of paper down in front of me and just said, I don't know who you are, but if you're involved with Star Wars, I want your autograph.
Oh,
And it's like, holy crap, this is that, you just, again, the first inkling of this is how big, this stuff is.
wow.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And it was, let's say, great opportunity. And, I knew a lot of the authors that I was working with in there. And so it was great shooting stuff back and forth with Kevin Anderson. And I mean, Tim Zahn and I were on the phone all the time. It was a really great experience. Lucasfilm has been unbelievably nice to me, down through the years. So that was a very cool thing. So,
That's incredible. Uh,
yeah.
you say Lucasfilms has been very nice to you. Do you have anything like from the set or anything they've sent you that you is super special?
No, they've not done anything like that. But a number of times there were conventions outside of the United States who called them up and said, "Who should we invite?" And I was on the list. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
so I've got to go to Australia a couple times and Germany and stuff. So yeah, so
Cool.
it was really really neat. So
Uh, so this may be a repetitive answer, but given that you've gotten to work with Star Wars and other IPs and stuff like that, do you have like a favorite property that you've worked on?
doing any novel, working with any property is uh it's so hard. You have to love something about all of them. I mean, I think that the first four X-Wing books are probably the best slice of series set of books that I've done, in my career. So I really, really love that. And I Jedi. So here's the weird thing, and it's really Star Wars and BattleTech are equal on this, and it blows my mind every time. There are children people have named after characters of mine. I mean, there are kids named Corin, and there are kids named Mirax. There are kids named Kay. There are kids named Victor. It blows my mind that people felt enough about these characters to actually name their children after them. So, that's so. Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick out, which ones do you love? Those two would be obviously right top of the list, but everybody else would be real tight there because you know getting to write in someone else's universe, getting to play with their stuff, and getting them to approve it. I mean, that is just really really cool.
Awesome. So, for anyone that maybe is aware of your books for BattleTech, but or Star Wars, but does not know the other IPs that you've worked on, can you name some of them?
Sure. Let's see. Conan, Gears of War, Dark Souls, Dark Conspiracy. Who else have I done novels for? I know I'm forgetting some stuff in there. Well, I mean, Shadowrun, obviously. Leviathan, I did a story for.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then Rogers Lasney did a project and invited me to work on that, which was an original called Forever After. Fred Sabragan, I got to write a story in his World of Swords, his swords books. So those things are not these big corporate properties, but things these individual
Awesome.
authors have loved and said, "Hey, yeah, come on, you can play in my sandbox." So yeah.
Cool. And then what about any original stories? Anything that's yours personally that are stories you've shared?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I've done tons of books that are mine. Once a Hero was the first independent book that I had.
Let's hear.
The Dragon Crown War series, that's 4 books. Age of Discovery, there are 3 there. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I've just done all sorts of different stuff.
I know when I
Uh,
talked to Kevin Anderson, he had told me like he was over 182 books or something like that that he had done.
right.
Do you have a count?
Um, Somewhere north of 70.
Okay.
Yeah. I after this is going to sound horrible, and there will be authors dying, but after you hit 60, it really is. It's when you have more books than you've been alive, years you've been alive, you just kind of, you kind of lose track.
That's really funny. Awesome, awesome. Okay, cool. Well, let's bring it back to Catalyst Land. You had mentioned that
Sure.
you've written for Shadowrun. Can you share a little
Mhm.
bit about those for those who may not have known that?
Sure. Yeah. I do the Wolf and Raven stories. I actually turned out Shadowrun fiction before the game was finished. Because I was in Chicago and Jordan Wiseman told me all about Shadowrun at the same meeting that I was learning about Renegade Legion to do the role playing game for that. And I went back to Phoenix and got this just based on what um, Jordan had described. I got this idea for a brilliant story. Wrote it in one day. Uh, called Jordan at home and said, "So I got this Shadowrun story," and he said, "Send it to me." I did. He sent it to the design team, and so we were off and running. And I just did. These are short stories that I was doing totally on spec and wasn't getting paid for them. And then later on, uh, Game Designers Workshop had a magazine, and they took some of them. So it was just a lot of fun, getting to play with those characters in that world. And now in the new anthologies that have been coming out, and in the new magazine, I've got stuff going into those. So
Awesome, awesome, cool.
yeah,
Uh, so Heir Apparent, do you? I don't know if I have the date that it actually releases because it's on Books to Read, which is our pre-order link. Let's see if it gives us the date here. Of course it doesn't. But I believe it comes out this month. Um,
John led me to believe it comes out this week,
oh,
but
does it come out this week? We try
I think
to
so.
time
Yeah, yeah,
these pretty relevantly, but I'm not always the one doing the schedule anymore. So,
sure.
um, I'll message him at here. When does release? Um, Anything else you'd like to say of having worked on this story in particular? What it means to the line, the lore, anything in particular?
The cool thing was having talked to the patrons who had wanted to be in there, and finding a way to work them in and make the story work. That was kind of cool. I had not done a series of novellas in this way, knowing that they were going to have to each sort of stand alone and yet be linked. And being able to make stuff up as I went along. And also, I think that the third book, which title I can't remember, third one goes to it goes to Solaris 7. But we've seen Solaris 7 in the big leagues, and I've done that a number of times. This was the farm team. This was working your way into the big leagues, and it was just a lot of fun to be able to go back and play around with stuff and pull things out of the warrior books, because all this is taking place before those. So anything that got mentioned as Solaris 7 lore, now I was able to make it real and stuff right there. So that was cool.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for Q&A with the chat. So if you
Sure.
have questions for me or Mike, just ping the moderators so that they can see your question and they'll feed them over to us. Uh, to start with, any stories from Wasteland? Such a classic in the CRPG space.
Um uh I'm trying to remember. Well, I mean, Wasteland, the coolest thing about Wasteland is that Alan Pavlich was the programmer, and neither he nor I had approached a game like this before. So we really didn't know what you could do and couldn't do. And so it's just a lot of fun of being on the phone going, "Alan, can you let me do this?" "Yeah, sure, I can make that work." "Okay, great. If that will work, then I can do this, right?" "Well, yeah, that makes sense." So literally we had this role-playing game where if you came up against a locked door, initially you'd have to pick the lock, which is great. By the end of the game, in the final build of the game, there were 14 different ways that you could open that door, from blowing it up to shooting the lock off to, doing all of these things. And it was just really a really fun evolution
Oh,
of
cool.
how all that stuff came together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, Night Moss says, please tell Mike his Leviathan short story, How the West Was Done, was very enjoyable.
Oh, good, good. Uh, that one ties back into the Hopalong Cassidy novels by Clarence Mulford, which I was reading a ton of those back at the time, and there's a reference in that story to an issue of a magazine, um, and everything in there is true because I was looking at a copy of that magazine as I was writing that story.
Awesome. Awesome. I just thought of a question too, but I'm going to prioritize mine after all of these people. Billy asks, what was your favorite character to write? Or even a character you haven't written that you'd like to write about in Battletech?
I think my favorite characters to write about, well, right now, it's Coral Hamilton with the Death Kangaroos. He is just a blast to write about. But prior to that, I would say that the characters I really, really enjoyed writing were Victor and Kay. Uh, um, just because the way their personalities were complementary, and yet each approached the world entirely differently. So it was a nice contrast, and it was fun to have them together when they were together, and yet having them apart, each one was his own sort of dynamic presence, and so that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Kalos' gaming table asks, what is the one thing you're most proud to have added to the Battletech lore?
Um, at the risk of sounding hideously egotistical, there is so much I have added. I cannot pick one thing out.
Fair. Fair. Oh, here's your answer, buddy. I mean, that's 40 years of lore. That's a lot to work on. So
There is a lot of there. I will say this. The funniest thing was when I created the Kellhounds, I always I never expected that they would get the following and become as big as they did.
really
And so that is really cool having seen that happen.
awesome, awesome. Big Red 40 Tech asks, "What's your favorite part about the Kellhounds?"
Anything that Red likes is my favorite part. Um, I think with the Kellhounds, what's been fun is watching the generations go on. Also with the Kellhounds, dealing with the character of Morgan Kell, and all the different things he went through, has been a lot of fun. That was when you're a writer and you have characters that grow and change and mature, um, that's something which is just really, really neat. And getting to be part of that happening for Morgan, getting to see that all go down was a lot of fun. And again, something when you're just starting out, you just can't anticipate.
Awesome. Um, a couple of BattleTech related questions. Some of these are more logistical. Grom asks, will the Art of War be available through the usual distribution channels? I'd like to support my FLGS. If so, yes. It's on the release schedule, so it will be going to retail and retailers. Lorcan, any word on the print on demand for this? Each book separately or a single compilation? That would be a question for John.
I
Do you know?
I think it was going to be a compilation.
Okay. All right.
I think that's what I've heard. But again, they always tell the writers these things last and then forget what they tell us. So, but that's what I am under the impression it'll be.
Okay. Yeah, and John hasn't responded to my last question, so I'd ask him, but we're not going to get that. um let's see. Any news on Merck's EU shipments? I'm doing a backer update later today, but they're supposed to have started either yesterday or today, but or this week in general. But we are waiting to hear officially before I make that post. So, waiting to get the email from QML letting me know when they start. Oh, my older dog is mad at my younger dog. So.
Uh,
um, Leviathan's question. Any more Leviathan stories coming from Michael Stackpole or otherwise? I don't know about or otherwise, but Mike?
all they have to do is ask. I would love to write more about Will Cassidy. So,
Awesome. Um, Mad Murph asks, when do we get the full Alaric book that you teased?
you guys just got to make it worth my while.
um, that's really funny. That's awesome. Uh, I think I've been through all the questions already. So keep questions coming, but I am going to ask mine. Do you have a favorite author? Like who you mentioned like what you were reading a lot of at the time. Like who are your favorites to go to?
Um, you know, it, the weird thing about reading other authors is that you can fall in love with these people and what they do, and so a lot of the books I read, that's it. You're hitting something. I mean, right now I've been reading Robert Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, going back to some of the old sword and sorcery stuff, but writers like Roger Zelazny, Fred Saberhagen, Dennis McKiernan. There's a writer out of Britain who writes mysteries called spy mysteries called Mick Herron. I really enjoy his work. Stephen King. You know, when I end up reading writers who are better than I am, that really it drives me to do more. Or guys who do things differently. It's like, oh, let me explore that. Let me see what those skills are that I have to do to be able to hit that. So
Awesome. Awesome. Let's see. Question from Himmelganger. What were the reasonings behind choosing Clan Wolf as the protagonist clan in the Blood of Kerensky trilogy?
um I mean, what it pretty much boiled down to, and you have to remember that at the time that we were writing that, all the clans was names. They were just names on a list. I personally have an affinity for wolves. Therefore, I decided, and I was the guy that was making up the names. That's the other thing. So, of course, there was going to be a clan wolf, and that was it. And so, wolf just worked for me, and so that's why. I know that there are a lot of people that are critical. They'll refer to clan wolf having plot armor, or because it was favored. Again, you have to remember that you're looking what is developed over 35 years, and you're projecting back that this was what was always intended. It wasn't. It could have been clan small poodles with funny haircuts. It wouldn't have mattered. Events would have gone on as they did, but choosing the wolves, set it was going to have to be a predator. So choosing the wolves was just because I like wolves. Another writer, it would have been the Ghost Bears, or another writer, it might have been the Jade Falcons. As it was, this is just what we had to do, and that was once the story started building itself. Then all the dynamics were laid in that they were going to be an important group to look at. But then we had the Jade Falcons, who, in my consideration, were a minor thing. But Bob Thurston goes and builds them out, and all of a sudden they're another power choice.
Awesome.
This is how that universe developed. So the idea that this was always intended is like, oh no, kids. If there had been it was seriously, if there had been someone else that suddenly it sparked an interest, a different clan, they would have had just as much chance to be built into something. And it just was that wasn't the way that it worked.
Cool. Awesome. Uh, Craig has a question that I'd love to hear your answer to.
All right.
What about Den of Wolves?
What about Den of Wolves? That's a really good question. The delay right now is I'm waiting on copy from Lauren, and Lauren and I have talked about this. I'm waiting on him to send me some stuff so that I can finish doing my part. But it's not really. I need to push him more to send me that stuff.
Please
Lauren,
push him more.
yeah, hey, as all of you know, Lauren is very, very busy doing lots of things. So I have not been pushing perhaps as I ought to, but I certainly will speak to him about this.
Awesome. Night Moss asks, which cons will you be attending in 2025?
I will be. Let's see. I will be at Adepticon in Milwaukee in the end of March. I will be. There's a small show in Phoenix on April 27th for the benefit of Seed's school, and I will be present there. And then I think in May there's nothing. In June I will be at SoonerCon in Oklahoma, and definitely Gen Con. Also in June there is Fan Fusion here in Phoenix. That I will be there. And then definitely Dragon Con. So, gaming oriented conventions, Adepticon, Dragon Con, and Gen Con. You can find me there
Awesome.
really easily.
Mad Cat asks, is there a battletech subject that you want to write about?
When you were, well, yeah, I'll do more Death Kangaroo stories. I'm in a unique position where if I want to do a story, John will find a place for it. Uh, at the same time, there are a number of assignments that I already have stacked up. So it's less me going into the material going, oh, I want to write about this, than me going, okay, here's my assignment, and then reading through the material and find something cool, elsewise to incorporate.
Awesome.
It's like going mining, and when you find that nugget, you get to build something around it.
Awesome. RJ, our Shadowrun line developer, asks, in Shadowrun we get a lot of Wolf, but are we ever going to delve more into Dr. Richard Raven's background, or at least see him cut loose?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I'm not so sure how much of his background you're going to get to see. The Wolf and Raven stories are told in what's referred to as the Great Detective model, where you have a raconteur and you have a genius. The problem is if you go too much into the genius, you spoil the trick. You have to be careful. But yeah, I've got a couple of stories that I'm kicking around where we get to see Raven cut loose a little bit more.
Awesome.
And that's just going to take a longer treatment. And aforementioned notes about things that are scheduled or not scheduled yet. So
cool. Lorcan asks, Mike's non-licensed work is all or mostly fantasy. Any desire to do an original sci-fi novel or series?
Because I do so much sci-fi in the tie-in realm, fantasy is where I get to play with that stuff. I have done some standalone science fiction and have plotted a couple of novels. But publishing changes so fast. The way you used to do novels back in the 90s or the beginnings of this century have shifted entirely, so that now to be able to sell those, I'd have to sit down and write the entire book, which is probably going to mean I'm not making any money for 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. And that's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
the will is there, and just figuring out how to finance it is would be the rub.
Awesome. Uh, if you named the clans, this is from Kalos's gaming table. Why do some of the clans have two names, like Ghost Bear or Jade Falcons, but then Clan Wolf is just Wolf?
Um, that was because most of them were just they were either Clan Wolf. We said that, and then some of the other ones I attached an adjective like Jade Falcons because just the Falcons wasn't enough. And there were some again that were just animals, and folks at FASA said, "Yeah, that's pretty basic. Let's try this." And some of the names, when you're getting down to the end of the list, right? Not all the names are brilliant. So some of them, some of them got some of them got edited. Writers always deal with editors. The things we want maybe don't always happen.
Awesome.
But yeah.
And then I think the last question we have is Himmelganger. How much of the X-Wing game did you play before writing the first X-Wing novel for Rogue Squadron?
Oh, I played all of it. I played that. I played the TIE Fighter game. I had a pre-release copy of the TIE Fighter game, and I burned through that. I burned through at least 3 joysticks in playing all of that stuff. So I knew it backward and forward, but that's why the opening scenario in Rogue Squadron, the first X-wing book, is a scenario out of the game. An annoying, frustrating scenario out of the game.
Awesome. Well, gosh, thank you guys all. Oh, question. Billy asks, can you bring back Clan Wolverine in Ill Clan?
They are dead. They are dead. They are dead. They are dead.
That was an easy one to answer. So
that was an easy one to answer. Yeah. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Mike, and thank you for all that you've contributed to the lore and the worlds that we love as gamers and nerds, and all these IPs in fantasy and science fiction. And if you guys haven't yet, get Heir Apparent, sign up, do the pre-order link that is in chat. I'll drop it again here in just a sec. And check out Mike's other books. There's over 60 to choose from, as we've learned today. Thank you so much for being here, Mike.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm going to drop that in chat one more time. And thank you guys all for being here. We'll be back next week. I should be here. The following week is Gamma, so I probably won't be. But we should still be here next week. So thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.